we excited for another Bookopoly vlog? That is a double! All of the options are not good. I don't like the book is the problem. I don't like the book. Have I bitten off more than I can chew? I feel like I'm the dumb bitch in the room right now because I got them. I'm so excited. Who sent me a spoon with Taylor Swift's face on it? Good afternoon, everybody. Are we excited for another Bookopoly vlog? I know I'm excited. I have been anticipating this video for quite some time. I've blasted through my currently reading today so that I'm all clear for this vlog because I love the reading mojo that this gives me, like the anticipation of not knowing what I'm going to be reading. If you guys are unfamiliar with Bookopoly, this is the first time you're encountering it. It's a TBR game that's based on Monopoly that I used to play every month, where I roll dice, move around the board, and I have to pick a book for every prompt that I land on. But going into 2023, I kind of crumble under the pressure of a strict monthly TBR these days, and I just can't cope with 5+ books that I have to read every month. So instead, we occasionally make a vlog where I use the board to pick the books like as we move through the vlog. So I'll only start by picking one book and then I'll roll again and pick another book. I will put the link to the entire like Bookopoly playlist with all the TBRs in the description box for you guys if you want to check it out. And I will also put the first vlog that I did like this. There's only been one installment so far, which is completely like not mandatory watching, but just if you guys want to catch up before you jump into this one. The rules are going to stay as they did for the last installment. So we are going to read a minimum of 5 books in this video and potentially more if we roll any doubles, and the vlog ends when Bookopoly allows me to end it. I know some of you guys suggested in the comments of the last video that we do this maybe with fewer rolls, with 3. My attitude towards creating content, especially vlogs in 2023, is better, not more. You guys love a long vlog and I love making a long vlog, so let's have long vlogs. Let's let this end when Miss Bookopoly, our MVP, says it can end. So yeah, there'll be a minimum of 5 books in here, potentially more depending on how the dice are treating me. I'm really scared. And in terms of what we need to read in March, the last time we did all mood reads, and I would love to do that this time, but I do have a hefty March TBR and I need to read some of those books, at least a couple of those books in this video. They're kind of my priority, sadly, just because I do have so many of them. And as well as that, Steph is currently hosting a month-long round of the final book support group, which is a readathon based on reading ideally the last book in a series, but also sequels. And while I'm not participating in that in terms of like it has a camp theme this time where you like pick a camp and there's prompts and stuff, while I'm not participating in it like that, I do want to participate in the same way that I always participate in this readathon, which is just prioritizing reading sequels for the length of time that the readathon is ongoing. So my pool of books to pick from, ideally with every prompt, unless it forces me to read a specific book, is going to be my TBR and sequels. So with that being said, let's see what Bookopoly has in store for us with our first roll. So the anticipation is killing me here. Last time the board treated us really well, so I can't lie, I'm terrified because she never does that twice in a row. But the last prompt that we landed on in January was science fiction, which means that our scope for this roll is from here to here. And realistically, everything in this area, I'm not too mad about if I land on it. The only dodgy space would be chance. But I mean, the odds are low, which means I'd probably jinx myself. So I'm just gonna get the first roll for March over with, which is 11. 9, 10, 11, and that is other. So any genre that is not romance, sci-fi, or fantasy, pretty much. This could have gone better, okay, because I don't have anything for the other category on my TBR. The reason why this is on here is to read, I tend to go with mysteries and thrillers. Just like a quick little compelling page turner to break up all of the fantasy and romance that I read. But I don't have any on my TBR, and because of the nature of the books that fall into other for me, it's essentially just any genre which isn't already represented on the board, which are the ones that I most commonly read from, which are fantasy, romance, and sci-fi, which, like I said, tends to be thrillers or horrors, but thrillers and horrors don't tend to be series. So I really struggled with this one. It's not a cheat, it feels like a cheat, but I don't think it is. To me, this is a different genre to fantasy, because the book that I picked for this one is Angel Volume 2, City of Demons, which is the only series that I could pick that wasn't sci-fi, romance, fantasy, or fantasy romance. I'm reading the Buffy reboot comics, which is essentially Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my favorite TV show, rebooted into the modern day. So it's set in 2019 and it keeps like the core vibe of Buffy but modernizes it. So there's technology, the fashion's brought up to date, the society is brought up to date, and the next thing that I have to read in the reading order, because it does switch between the Buffy and Angel reboots, is Angel Volume 2, and this is paranormal, and I normally group paranormal with fantasy romance in my brain, but this isn't paranormal romance. This is just paranormal slash urban fantasy, which feels very different to what I categorize as fantasy. Like, it's still fantastical, absolutely, but to me paranormal just feels different. So we're going with it. Okay, I know you could fight me on this, you absolutely could, but I don't read a whole ton of paranormal, and when I do, it's romantic. So it is different and outside of what I typically read. So look, this one, like I said, is part of the Buffy reboot series. I really loved the first volume of Buffy, and then it just went downhill. They changed the artist. Dan Mora was the artist for Volume 1, and he is a phenomenal artist. And I really hate the style that they went with in Volume 2 and 3. So it has been slow progress making my way through these, because I'm just so disappointed. It feels like they catfished me with that first volume, and nothing else has been that good. So we're gonna do Angel, which I have heard that the Angel series is actually better than the Buffy series as you get into it. So fingers crossed. But this one was also a gift from Harry, so thank you very much to Harry for gifting this one to me. Will I get through this tonight? I am gonna start it now, but it is 4:30. And I'm going to start making dinner in 30 minutes, and then I have the live show for The Blade itself at 8 p.m. I feel like I will finish it after the live show, providing we don't hang around and chat. But oh no, I am going to want to come and check in with you guys just so I can roll again, because I'll be desperate to. So you'll probably hear from me later today, but don't hold me to that. It's getting quite dark in here now. I'm not sure if you guys can tell, but it is 8 minutes past 5. And in a weird turn of events, I have already finished Angel Volume 2. I've been really efficient today with finishing books. This is the third book that I finished today, and normally I've talked about this before, if a book is 700 pages long, I invest the time into reading it because I know it's going to take a long time. Normally something like this would take me at least an hour to 90 minutes because I expect it to be quick. It's like I think it's magically going to read itself because I don't put any effort in, but I did it. So this one I did give 4 stars, 100% agree that this is so much better than Buffy. Did realize that I didn't tell you what Buffy is actually about. I feel like I assume that everybody knows. This is a reboot of a 90s TV show, and in the TV show we are following the Vampire Slayer, which is the one girl in all of the world that is tasked with fighting back against the forces of evil, and she does it with a group of friends. She has a watcher, which is a mentor, and everything about the Buffy TV show, like all of the monsters and the demons, are kind of like an allegory for things that teenagers actually face, and there's a lot of human things within the show as well as like monsters and creatures. Angel is a central character in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and he is a vampire that was cursed with a soul, and eventually he gets his own spin-off where he moves to Los Angeles, and it's very Batman themed, especially season 1 of Angel, but he is a paranormal investigator, your Harry Dresden kind of character, where he works kind of alongside the police, although as like a vigilante force, and he sets himself up with a crew as a private investigator to help the helpless. So I really like the way that the creators of this comic have taken the characters and like the twist that they've put on them. Whereas Buffy was very clearly Buffy but just modernized, this is a lot more new and a lot more fresh, but in a way that you can still correlate these characters back to the characters in Angel. And I feel like even though they've taken this further away from Angel than the Buffy comics has taken that from Buffy, this works better because they have more freedom. And I love the Easter eggs in here. It's the same with the Buffy one. I love the way they reference the show. They reference things that happen in later seasons that doesn't spoil it if you're not that far into the show or if you haven't watched the show at all, in a way where if you have read the show, you know. And you can tell that this has been created by fans because they know the backstory of all the characters, they know all of their relationships, they know the intricacies of Buffy and the lore, and it shows. And I really, really like this one, so I did did give this one 4 stars, and I'm a little bit more like, my interest in this series is a little bit more reinvigorated now. Although I do feel like something that has also been holding me back with this is that I know that it's done now. I think there's 5 volumes of this, although it changes into Angel and Spike after this volume. There's the crossover Hellmouth issue, which is like a crossover event, which I need to read next. And then I think there's 8 volumes of Buffy and 1 standalone Willow spin-off. And then they're done, like they've started a different like reboot of Buffy. So that's sad, because I feel like they would have had more mileage with it, because there's a lot of scope within Buffy in general. Just the show itself ran for 7 seasons plus 5 seasons of Angel. Oh, something that I did really like about this, which is weird as well, is that Angel isn't actually in it, because I feel like the Hellmouth event happens alongside like the second, or like the first quarter of this is before the Hellmouth, and then I feel like the Hellmouth event is happening in the last 3 quarters of this. So Angel isn't actually in it, but I still really liked it. But to be fair, is Angel the best character in Angel? I love him, I do, but absolutely not. So yeah, I guess we'll roll again. I'm excited. I love this vlog project. So I really cannot tell like how dim the recording of this is, but we are definitely dealing with waning light in here, so I will try to be quick. This is the other space that we landed on. Wish me luck. I feel like there's a lot around here that's good, so I'm not overly worried, but maybe I am a little bit. That is a double! We have had our first double in this vlog. Oh my god. Okay, so that is going to be 6 books in this video. 7, 8, 9, 10. And that is a sequel, which ain't too bad. We landed on sequel, and I just put all of my Bookopoly stuff away because I thought I was going to read The Faithless by C.L. Clarke, which I need to read this month for the MB Book Club, which I'm a guest host of for March. But I feel like we're gonna do something else instead. 1 minute. So I have to start reading as soon as possible The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan, which is the second book in the Wheel of Time series, because I am a co-host for the Wheel of Time Along. We're in the same position where we were in the first installment of this vlog now, where I need to read a book in the Wheel of Time series, but I don't want to put it on the TBR because I'm not going to read through it in its entirety. Like, this is the kind of book where I'm disciplined. I knew that I had to read this. The live show I think is currently set for, we're discussing it now, but it's going to be right at the beginning of April, which means I need to get a move on with this, because I know from the first book that it was really slow going. So I decided that I was going to read, or I would have to read, if I didn't want to have to read massive chunks of it at once, 2 chapters a day for most of the month. And then the further you get into this book, the shorter the chapters are. So if I read 3 chapters a day at the beginning, it would be like 60 pages a day, which is kind of more than I want to read. But then when you get to the end, like 3 chapters is 20 pages. So I decided that I would do like 2 chapters a day and then accelerate my pace as I got further towards the end. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put The Great Hunt on the TBR for the sequel prompt, and we're gonna roll again for the book that I'm gonna focus my attention on. So the aim for this book in particular is to have it done by the end of the video by reading 2 pages a day, and then when we get to the end of this and I've read all of the rest of the books, I will then just focus my attention solidly on this one book until I'm done. And I know it's not going to take me forever like it did with the first book, because I'm on a time limit. I have like just over 2 weeks to read this one. So if you guys are unfamiliar with the Wheel of Time, I am co-hosting a read along that is created by Sandra from Got a Thing for Things. I'll put the announcement video down in my description box if you guys want to check it out. This is a very well loved adult epic high fantasy where everything happens over and over again. It's essentially a fight between good and evil, but with every age the same events happen and the Wheel of Time keeps turning. So within every age there is this influential figure called the Dragon Reborn, who is pivotal to this eternal struggle between light and dark. And in here we are following this age's dragon and a supporting cast of characters that are also influential in this age. That is, from the first book, what I can gather is the grand scheme of the plot. I feel like we're going to have some grey morality in the middle where the dragon's teetering backwards and forwards, because the issue in this world is that the balance is tipping towards darkness. So I'm assuming that the end goal is that the balance tips back towards light, but we're following this cast of characters from, I think they're around like 18, 20-ish, as they go out into the world from this sheltered upbringing in this village and each discover their destiny. And they all have, like, each member of the group very clearly has their role to play, which was established in the first book. We have some of them who are connected to old magic. We have some of them who are going to be connected to the Aes Sedai, which are the sorceresses of the world. We obviously have the dragon. We have a character who I feel is battling more with the darkness than any of the others are. And it is like the overarching plot is this very classic fight between good and evil. Evil. So I really enjoyed the first book. I found it to be quite slow, but I love a slow fantasy. It's very detailed and it's quite descriptive, but I love that because my secret, like a lot of you guys ask me how I can predict things in fantasy sometimes. It's in the details. With a lot of books, if an author pays attention to the details, you kind of get the feeling that the details must be relevant. But when you have an author like Robert Jordan or Brandon Sanderson or George R.R. Martin, there's so much detail that you don't know which are the ones that you need to be looking out for, which I love because then there's more capacity for me to be surprised essentially. And this is a detailed series. So yeah, I'm looking forward to diving back into this, but I am going to be taking it on like a 2 chapter per day basis until the chapters start to get a little bit shorter towards the end, and then I will move up to 3. I am also going to be making a spoilery video for this, which is a follow-up to the one that I did for Eye of the World, and my goal is to have this finished by the end of this vlog. So with that being said, let's roll again. Can you believe how long has this vlog been running? This vlog has been running for 50 minutes and we're on our 3rd roll of a minimum of 6 now though, so it's not like super extreme. So I feel like we're speed running, but let's see what our 3rd roll for this video is going to be. A 5. 4, 5. That's a community shelf card, so I'm going to give these a little bit of a shuffle just because I have no idea what is in any of these cards at this point because I play with this board so infrequently and I can't remember for sure the last time that I updated them. When do I stop shuffling? So. Oh, a TBR vet. So I looked on my TBR, my March TBR, and everything on there is pretty recent. So I'm looking at my spreadsheet now at the series tracker, which shows me all of the series that I'm currently in the middle of, just all of the series as of 2023 that I've read at all, or that I'm in the middle of still at this point. And I'm looking for the oldest series that I've owned. So not necessarily, oh shit. So not necessarily the one that I started the longest ago. I feel like I know what this is going to be, which is the Lotus War trilogy by J. Kristoff is right at the top. I started that in 2018, but I'm trying to think of what books I've owned the longest, because those books I only got in 2018, but I've owned books a lot longer than that. The Witcher, I feel like is a possibility. I could read Sword of Destiny. All of the options are not good, essentially, is what I'm going with here. All of the ones that I feel like I've owned the longest are just a bit much. But then I haven't owned that physical book the longest, because I think the only other option we have here is carrying on with Second Era Mistborn and reading Shadows of Self, which, oh my god, The Great Hunt and Shadows of Self side by side. I will be doing Shadows of Self in audio if that's the one that we go with. I've had Mistborn as a series on my TBR the longest, but I haven't physically owned Mistborn the longest. I also just remembered that as part of my TBR rules, I have to my patrons vote on one of them, so we need to bear that in mind for the next 3 rolls. I don't feel like I have enough TBR vet sequels to do that for this one, and then we've already decided on, I mean, I need to read The Great Hunt, so that was a good move. Let's go on Goodreads, shall we? Because the only reason that I didn't own Shadows of Self specifically is because I had the first 3 Mistborn books, and I think I also had Alloy of Law, and I hadn't read them yet, so I was like, well, I'm not going to get book 5 if I haven't read book 1 in this series. So we'll go to my want to read shelf on Goodreads and we'll sort it by date added. This could open up like a whole can of worms. Oh god, this is like Sarah Dessen and Anna and the French Kiss, which I don't even want to read Anna and the French Kiss anymore. I've unhauled Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. I guess I'm looking for a sequel to a series I've already started that I added the longest ago. I added Chain of Thorns to my Goodreads TBR on the 21st of September 2015 and it was only published this year in January. Damn, Winds of Winter. If only it existed. Shadows of Self it is. I don't know because my Samsung screen is shit, but it says this one is Shadows of Self and it says oh, I've just like scrolled down. Added the 8th of May 2016, so I've wanted to read that. That's been on my to read shelf on Goodreads for 7 years, so I guess we're going with that one. All right, I'll go get it. So while I am genuinely terrified by the prospect of reading Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson at the same time, if we take out the fact that I'm also going to be reading The Great Hunt at the same time, this definitely could have gone worse because I need to carry on with Mistborn. I need to get to the book after this, which is A Bands of Mourning, so that I can reread Stormlight, so that I can then read Rhythm of War for the first time and then finish Second Era Mistborn. So this is also, I think, on my 2023 TBR, so excellent in all of those points. Also, in terms of fantasy, it is only 375 pages. The downside for this is obviously that I'm reading 2 adult epic fantasy series side by side, which if I am reading more than one book at once, I definitely try not to make them the same genre. I also hated the Alloy of Log. I just hated it. So this is the 5th book in the Mistborn series. The first 3 books are a trilogy about this guy called Kelsier who is trying to overthrow the Dark Lord, who is the ruler of the final empire. It's set in a world where we have allomancy, which is where people ingest metals and harness those abilities to make themselves stronger or faster or like heighten their senses. And the core plot is kind of laid out as a heist, as Kelsier and his band of allomancers are trying to overthrow the empire, and like the tagline is, what if the Dark Lord won? I love the Mistborn trilogy, but this is set 300 years later. It's a flintlock fantasy. We're following a guy called Wax who is a lord, but he left the city many years ago, I think it's about 20 years before the start of the series, to go be a lawmaker in the Roughs, which is like the Wild West. So he's like a vigilante sheriff of the Wild West, and due to unforeseen circumstances he has to come back and become the head of the household, but he finds out that there is a series of train robberies happening where hostages are also being taken. So he's trying to distance himself away from his past life because it's not civilized and it's not proper, and take up the mantle of being head of the household, but then he gets sucked back into his old ways via this plot as he tries to find out who's behind the robberies. I didn't like him as a character. I also don't like Wayne, who was his sidekick back in the Roughs and like teams up with him again in the city. I didn't like either of the female characters, although granted at least one of them we didn't see very much of, so there's potential for growth there. I hate the flintlock fantasy setting. I hate gunfights. They were so boring. It was just a really rough time. So Aaron actually suggested that I pick up the audiobook and try the audiobook, and I have listened to it is Michael Kramer, right? I've listened to a sample of Michael Kramer before, and I wasn't the biggest fan. Granted, I am very, very fussy when it comes to audiobooks. Everybody loves the Blade Itself narration, and it grates on me. So I know that I'm picky and I'm definitely the odd one out, but it is a Michael Kramer narration, and normally I wouldn't, because I know that Michael Kramer typically just doesn't do it for me. I love full cast and sound effects and that kind of thing. I just struggle to pay attention to just like single narration, especially when it comes to fantasy. And I am very particular, I'm easily annoyed by sound, which makes me extra picky. I disliked Alloy of Law so much that I'm willing to go the audiobook route to see if I enjoy it a little bit more. And also I have heard that the series does get better from Alloy of Law, so I'm still expecting to at least like this series, even if I'm not sure I'm gonna love it, just because the set in flintlock fantasy, really not my thing. Here are my next 2 books. Might be a while before, not before you hear from me, because I'll still be around. Might be a while before I finish one of these though, but that's the first 3 rolls for this done already, which is weird. That's not how I anticipated this going. Good morning. I am currently about to set up. I forgot how good a week this was to listen to an audiobook, because I'm about to start preparing for the first candle restock of 2023, which is late in the year. It's halfway through March, and this restock is going to be going up not this week, potentially next week, but that provides a perfect situation for listening to audiobooks. And I am very picky with audio, and like I said, I struggle to retain information with audio, but I feel like with how many podcasts I've been listening to over the last year or so, it's improved my ability to listen to things. So normally I wouldn't listen to something like Shadows of Self while trying to do a candle restock, but apparently I'm more tolerant to listening to things now. So far so good, I guess, in terms of Shadows of Self. And by that I mean in terms of progress. I'm 60-ish pages into it, which I feel is decent because I haven't listened to it very much since last night. But in terms of enjoyment, it's fine. We've already had 2 big action scenes 70 pages in, so I feel like the audiobook is really going to save this book for me, because I don't think I can make it through physically. But yeah, I will check in with you guys. We'll see how much I can get listened to today. I'm hoping to make it, I'm definitely gonna make it a quarter of the way through because I'm only like 30 pages away from that. But hopefully we can push a little bit further, maybe get a third to halfway through it today.
You're unprecedented, and I regret that we never talk. So when October rolls around, I watch my emotions before they bubble over, chasing four-leaf clovers, missing you more than I know now. We used to walk along the meadow, you were pretty, it felt so serene. Later now, but that feeling is still stuck with me. The water's frozen over by the lakeside, down by the boat house.
Let me tell you guys, I miss Kelsey. I do. I miss my boy Kelsey. I've made a dent in this today, okay? I'm pretty much bang on halfway. I'm 188 pages into this, and I gotta say, while I wouldn't say that I could listen to this audiobook all day, like it's the best audio I've ever listened to, it's clearly doing something right for me because I've been listening to this for the majority of the day. I made a bunch of candles like I said I was doing. I then did a 30-minute pop ride with Robin Our Zone, and then it was 4:30. It's 5 p.m. now, but around 4:30 I had 30 minutes to kill and didn't really know what to do with my time, so I just put the audiobook back on and did a whip round and cleaned the living room. So I'm returning to it. I'm enjoying. I don't like the book is the problem. I don't like the book, but the audio narration is getting me through it. I don't like that this is heavily action based, which we know that's just a personal preference. I'm not a big like fast-paced action scene girly, but it's Wax and Wayne that are really killing this series to me. I can't stand either of them. Wax is just your basic white bread manly man for manly men kind of character. He has nothing appealing to him whatsoever in my opinion, and it is just my opinion. I know loads of people love the characters in this series. And then Wayne is just a creep. He's just a creep. I would cross the street if I encountered these two and it was like twilight, it was quiet street, I was walking by myself, I would cross to the other side of the street to avoid them because I wouldn't feel comfortable walking past them. Wayne especially is just creepy. He needs to keep his eyes in his head because he is literally giving me the ick. And like I said when I read The Blade itself last week, humor is very hit or miss for me. I don't like when Sanderson attempts humor. When you read like the Skyward series, I think it makes the series feel very juvenile, which yes, it's for YA, but it feels like he's overly dumbing it down and making it slapstick for a YA audience. And it feels the same with this, although not dumbing down for a YA audience. It's just the humor just feels very juvenile to me. It's like teenage boy humor. Does anybody like teenage boy humor apart from teenage boys? And this series is not for me. But that being said, I stand by my decision to continue this series and not just look at the Coppermine to find out like the details that I need, because that's just not how I roll to start off with. Like I want to read the text and glean the information for myself. I don't just want to take it from the Coppermind, and that is already proven valuable because we have the reintroduction, the reappearance of characters from First Era Mistborn in this book, which we did have just a little bit of in the first book in this series, and it's very interesting the ways that they're coming forward in this, and also just generally the way that they're built into the world being historical figures, but the way especially in this book that they're making an appearance I'm finding very interesting. Brie, can you put that down for just a moment, please? She's taken the squeaker out of one of her toys that I gave her. She'd already started destroying it, but I gave it back to her because I was feeling sorry for her. And she's just dismantled it and took this massive squeaker out, and now she's playing with that. But what was I saying? Yeah, the reappearance in this book in particular I'm finding very interesting, and I feel like there's also a little kernel of information that I've gleaned based on something that one specific character said. I do wish that the series in general was more fresh in my mind at this point, because I know the way that things are being revealed, I know that I should have got there first, and I would have done if I'd have read the series more recently. But it's stuff to do with like the creatures, the magic system and the lore lore of the world, some of which only really came into play and we learned the most about towards the end of the Mistborn trilogy, where I definitely feel like I retained the most information from the first book in the series, The Final Empire, which is like my second favourite Sanderson book ever. We're getting somewhere with it. And actually, I have Patreon Sprint starting in just under 2 hours, because tonight was just the best evening to do it in terms of like my reading. I've already read plenty today, so it's not like I need the sprints to give myself a boost, but I only actually have 3 hours and 47 minutes of this left. I usually listen to a podcast when I cook, but I think in the interest of not prolonging my pain, I'm gonna listen to this while I cook, which will knock another half an hour out. When I start the sprints, I'm going to read my 2 chapters of Wheel of Time or The Great Hunt, and then I'm going to go back to this. So potentially I could finish this tonight, which is wild to me, but I am glad that the audiobook is proving to be such a smooth experience, because that means that I can also listen to the rest of this series and get through this as painlessly as possible.
You're like freaking out at me right now, I feel like.
Really? I have a conversation with you.
Ray, we're doing
I'm like shutting down during it right now.
Living in a crowded dream, searching for
Good afternoon, my guys. I am very pleased to report that I have finished Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson, and I enjoyed the end of this. I didn't enjoy the end of like the resolution of the plot of this book and the plot line that runs through this book in particular, but as is typical, I mean, it's a Sanderson book. It's my least favourite Sanderson book, or second least favourite, because I enjoyed book 1 less than this, ever. But it's still a Sanderson book, so the plot twists associated with some of that plot line were really, really good. But in terms of like the actual plot that is the focus of the Wax and Wayne storyline throughout here, I just don't care, because I don't care about Wax and Wayne. And aside from the things that I've mentioned generally that I don't really like about this series, our main character is Wax, who has the background of being a lawmaker in the Roughs, which means that it has like an investigative mystery tone and element to it, which you guys know, if I start reading a book and it turns into a whodunit kind of situation or a mystery kind of situation that has a lot of conventions of the mystery genre, then I usually DNF pretty early on, and I don't want to DNF this series just because of it being related to the Cosmere. So it's just a series that I'm never going to enjoy, I don't think, because it just has too much going against it, that not even the fact that it's part of the Cosmere and written by Brandon Sanderson can save this for me. So I did give this one 2 stars, but saying that, I guess it's a higher 2 stars than I gave the first book in this series, and the plot is continually thickening when it comes to the ties to the Cosmere and also the ties to First Era Mistborn. Like I said when I read the first book, and potentially in this vlog, when I got to the end of the first book, I got to the epilogue, it was the first kind of hint that I had that there was a greater plot to this and that it has more relevance to the Cosmere and more connections to First Era than is immediately apparent. Throughout this book, we just developed on that, and I really like the way that characters that we've met before are being reintroduced into this series, and also the part that they're playing, because something else that's really good about this, or really interesting about this, is that the good guys that we know are the good guys are not necessarily the good guys when we look at them through the lens of the characters in this series. So definitely worth the read in terms of it being part of the Cosmere, in my opinion. So even though I'm having like a fairly miserable time reading this series, I do stand by my decision to persevere just to get the information that I need out of these books so I can have the full picture of the Cosmere. And like I said, I know that I can check out the Coppermind, but that just truly is not my style. So I'm really shocked though at how fast I read through this one. It's been less than 48 hours since I picked this up and I'm done, which I mean, I know audiobooks are traditionally faster than reading things physically, but I'm not an audiobook girly. It normally takes me a while. This one was also a gift from Vish, so thank you very much to Vish for gifting this one to me. Vish actually has very, very similar reading taste to me and has a booktube channel that I will link down in my description if you want to go check her out. If you like my fantasy and my romance recommendations, Vish's taste is very on par with mine. So that is not the third book for this video down, but the third prompt has been fulfilled. So that means it's time to roll for another one. So I am pretty sure that the community shelf prompt that we landed on was this one over here. And looking at what we can possibly land on, aside from the like big, like risky spaces like Chance and Viewer Recommends, I don't think there's a bad spot that I can land on here. We're going into a very promising section of the board with fantasy and fantasy romance, like taking up the majority of the spaces. So let's see what we get for roll number 4. 8. Oh no, why did I say that? Why did I say that? Okay, so we are 2 for 2 with this viewer recommendation space now because it came up the last time that we did this, and I gotta say this is one of the most anxiety inducing spaces on the board because I have so many adult high fantasy books. I have so many first books in like adult epic fantasy series. I have so many thick books, and the way that this works is that every December I make a video where I go through all of my shelves and I show you guys every single book I own that I haven't read, and I invite you all to comment which of the books that I own and haven't read you would like me to read for absolutely whatever reason you would like to choose. And then when I land on viewer recommendations, I pull up a random comment picker, and whatever comment is picked is the book that I have to read. So if you would like to contribute to this and add your recommendations to the pot, then I will link that video and you can go ahead and recommend me some books. But last time this came up we did really well. It was Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, which is one of my only 5-star reads of the year and also kickstarted my Ali Hazelwood obsession. So not all bad things come from this prompt, but I don't think I'm lucky enough to get like 2 relatively easy reads in a row. So without further ado, let's stop procrastinating. Oh, that's not bad. That's decent. We can work with that. So this month's viewer recommendation, as recommended by Kim, is A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. So this definitely could have gone much worse. I have wanted to read from Scarlett St. Clair for a while. This was the first book that I got from her. I was also sent King of Battle and Blood by Source Books, and I think she has something new out as well. But this one in particular is a Hades and Persephone retelling, which is why I really wanted to read it. But I have since heard not the best things about it. It's a contemporary fantasy romance, and I think that Hades has a gambling empire in the mortal world, and Persephone ends up in a contract with him to bring life to the underworld. However, this isn't a promise that she can fulfill because her power of life and growth isn't actually working. So the bad things that I've heard about this is that Persephone has a lot of dumb bitch energy, which is really killing the vibe for the majority of people. That being said, I am going to go into it with an open mind and I do hope I really enjoy it. The only downside to this being picked is that it isn't a sequel, obviously, but I did lay out at the beginning of this video it had to be like on my TBR or a sequel where possible, like where I had a choice. And with this one, I obviously didn't have a choice. And this one was actually gifted to me as well by Linda, so thank you very much to the lovely Linda for sending this one my way. And this is, to be honest, this is actually a pretty great pick because I went from The Blade itself last week to reading Wheel of Time and Sanderson side by side with only a thin comic in the middle. So something a little bit lighter is definitely needed right now, especially because I'm not going to be listening to the audiobook of this. I'm going to be reading it physically, which means that I'm going to be flip-flopping between this and The Great Hunt on a daily basis for the foreseeable future. So yeah, thank you so much to Kim for recommending this one, and fingers crossed I enjoy it, but I will obviously fill you guys in along the way. Good morning. I'm just popping in to let you guys know that it's Bree's birthday. Happy birthday, precious. So I bought her a bed and stuff, which obviously she doesn't really appreciate, but she needed her bed and her crate replacing. So I sorted all that out for her a couple of weeks ago. And then for her actual birthday, we've got her a Piglet Squishmallow, because I heard that Squishmallows are indestructible. Like, dogs can't destroy them. I'm calling bullshit on that straight away, but I will record the results here so we can find out if Squishmallows are truly indestructible. I really just don't think they are. I think she's going to tear it apart pretty easily, but we'll see. I say it was worth the risk. Squishmallows are not cheap, so we got her like a small one, and if it does prove to be indestructible, then she can have bigger ones, but I'm not paying £17 for a medium Squishmallow that's going to last like an hour. So we got her a little Squishmallow and also a bone that's like as big as her torso. But we're currently waiting for Curtis to get up, because I don't think he cares, to be honest. Well, we don't want to do presents without him, do we? No, but you're one. Do you remember when she was just like a little bloop with no nose? I remember. I remember, baby. A little bloop with no nose. I have my glasses cleaning cloth in my hand, which is what she wants. You don't actually love me, do you, baby? You just want everything that I have. You gonna open it, bud? Gav said happy birthday.
Several days later.
Where you go? Buddy, it's yours. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. So, can confirm, Squishmallows are not indestructible. He does have a hole in him. She is pulling the stuffing out. It took her maybe 20 minutes to put a hole in him, and it's not even a longer seam. And the tissue paper that I wrapped him in lasted longer. Like, it took her longer to unwrap him than it did to make a hole in him and start pulling stuffing out. So the rest of my day is probably going to be spent just following her around. Look, there it is. Just following her around picking the stuffing up. So I'm glad that I didn't spend a lot of money on a bigger Squishmallow, because as you can, where she found that bit of bone? As you can see anyway, it's not gone well. This is a failed experiment and TikTok lies, which we always knew. So the postman just came and he delivered this to me, which is a book. Looks like an arc, if I'm being honest, and it's from Penguin Random House. So I have absolutely no idea what this is. I am, or have been previously, on the list for Del Rey, which is like the fantasy imprint of Penguin, but it's rare. They've only ever sent me one unsolicited thing, and the one thing I've requested from a publisher, I'm pretty sure is not Penguin. So I have no idea what this is. This is Mistral by Heather Walter, which, I mean, I already have the hardback of this, and I also have the arc of this. So, I mean, thank you, Del Rey. Thank you very much for sending me my third copy of this one. This is interesting, actually, because like I said, Del Rey have only ever sent me one unsolicited book before, and it was the Arc of Malice, which I really enjoyed. Like, I'm not mad about it, but now I have 3 copies of this, all sent to me by Del Rey. So if you guys are unfamiliar with this, I may as well do the pitch at this point. It is a new adult retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but told from the perspective of like the Maleficent character, who is a dark fairy that has, like, there's graces in this world, which are the good fairies, and we have the dark grace, which is our main character, Alice, and she is treated terribly because of her dark powers, and this essentially drives her actually to darkness. But during, I think it's a party, she meets Aurora and they end up growing close. It's kind of a villain origin story. My one kind of criticism of it was that it didn't go as dark as I would like it to, but from where we ended up, like at the end of the first book, it seemed kind of like it was going in that direction. To be fair, actually, this is a really nice paperback. It would be nice to read because it has like a really floppy binding on it. But yeah, thank you to Del Rey for sending me a 3rd copy of Mistral.
I can't feel scared 'cause I know that we'll never get that time again. We used to drive out to the farm and play around, make up till your hair was grey. I still pretend it feels the same. Remember, we stay up on Saturdays, drink with you now. The time is strange. Time is strange.
Clean and organized.
I hear it. Yo, oh my dude.
Hey,
What's up, Caesar?
hey, Mallory, nice to meet you.
What's up, dude?
Relationships ever worked, and so I thought, okay, maybe he's not cut out to be married. I don't know.
We used to walk along the meadow. You were pretty, it felt so serene. And it's a few years later now, but that feeling is still stuck with me.
Hello everybody. So today I've done a couple of unexpected activities. I did a lot of work for the candle restock, which I'm happy about, but I also finalized my trip to Denver that's happening this summer, which I'm really excited about because I'm going to be going visiting Kelsey, otherwise known as KJ Sutton, the author of the Fortuna Swan series, who I've been friends with for 3-4 years now. And we're finally going to be meeting. I'm going to be spending not quite a week. I think it's about 5 days in Denver. And I've never been to Colorado either. So I'm really excited. I've never actually been past the east coast of the US. So I'm really excited for that. But also very nervous because it's going to be a solo trip. Like I'm not actually traveling with anybody. So I've just had like a full blown panic, like booking and sorting the flights for that. But this arrived today, which I wanted to show you guys because I'm pretty sure that this is the Magical Readathon bookmarks from the wonderful G at Book Roast, which, yes, it is. G's packaging is honestly immaculate. I wish it could be me, but I'm sorry guys if you want pretty packaging from me. I just don't have the patience. But I did order a new set, or like all of the new Magical Readathon bookmarks. So I already have the ones from last year, which are all of the guild ones and the questing one. I will put a link to the announcement video for the spring round of G's Magical Readathon as well, which is starting in April. My favorite readathon of all time. It's like an RPG kind of situation where you attend a magic school and take classes and pass exams to work towards like your ideal career. But I ordered the Aurelium Academy one, which matches the guild ones but is a holographic foil, which is stunning quality. And then I ordered the full set of class bookmarks as well, so this is one for each one of the Aurelium Magical Readathon classes. And the idea is obviously is that you use the bookmark for whichever class you are reading for at the time. I think I have Elemental Studies, Shapeshifting, Demonology, and 2 more to do. But like that's the Demonology one, and that's Elemental Studies. But I'm very glad that they've arrived. Honestly, I am such a fangirl for Magical Readathon, not even because I'm friends with G, because I've done every single round of Magical Readathon for the last, is it 5 years it's been going? Potentially 6. Oh god, can't be that long, right? That's a long past time. And that was before I was even friends with G. I really love it so much, so I'm always happy and willing to support the Magical Readathon, and I always give it my all. In fact, next month I'm not doing any vlog projects. I'm only going to be doing like Magical Readathon weekly vlogs, and I am also of course co-hosting Realmathon, which I will put the announcement video for that down below. I am the leader, or one of the leaders, for Enya, which is the fantasy team. But the great thing about Realmathon is that you don't have to read for prompts. It's like the books that you read generate points, so it's quite easy to double up on the readathons. But just for a little bit of a reading update, I'm not very far into A Touch of Darkness. I am hoping to get quite a bit read tonight, although I've been doing a lot of trip planning over the last couple of days, which like every month there's always a couple of days where I have a burst of like planning for the trips that I'm doing in 2023, and it's been this last couple of days, so I'm very excitable right now and I can't really focus. I'm 22 pages into this, so I don't really have anything to report at this point. And Wheel of Time I am a little bit further into. I'm 100 and I think 30-ish pages in, with me needing to get to page 154 tonight. That's really interesting. We're getting a lot about the Aes Sedai, which are like the sorceresses of the world, in like the first 100 or so pages, which I'm really glad that we're learning more about. And I'm actually also sticking to my 30-ish pages per day, which I thought, I always go in with the best intentions, but I never make time to actually read the 30 pages, but I'm doing real well with that. I do actually really need to start the spoiler vlog for that, which I was going to do today, but I don't know what it is with me and spoiler vlogs. I really want to make them, but starting them, it takes me forever. Like I really drag my feet on it. That's where we're up to That's what's going on. Now I'm gonna go and feed Brie and Ham. It's 5:15 and I'm gonna go make some food for me as well, and then just get some reading done, hopefully, because I feel a little bit behind, so I do need to get quite a bit read tonight if possible.
Still walking along the meadow, picking petals, it feels so surreal. And it's a few years later now, but that feeling's never gonna leave.
So I haven't been in touch because I haven't been reading, but my Card Rain in a Circle Patreon readathon starts in approximately 10 minutes, so I'm going to keep this brief. So I'm going to be setting up to do 5 hours of sprints tonight, and then I'll do an extra 7 tomorrow, and we'll see how much I can get read over the next 24 hours. I was going to do a separate vlog for this, but actually with the way I'm feeling, and especially the way I'm feeling towards reading right now, I didn't think it would be very successful. So luckily the prompt for this round is opulence, and it's in like the vibe section of the board because we use the 2021 Bookopoly board for my Patreon readathons. So it's just a book that gives you opulent vibes, and that can be any condition. It can be because it's a special edition, or it can be because it has a lot of foiling on it. It can be that it has like a luxury material like diamond or gold in the title. It could have something to do with royalty. It could be jewel tones on the cover, so like sapphire, emerald, ruby, anything to you that is like opulent adjacent. So luckily both of the books that I'm reading actually fit for that. I didn't read anything at all yesterday. So I have a section of Wheel of Time to read, luckily, because I've actually been reading more than 32 pages per day. It doesn't matter at this point that I have missed a section, so I am aiming to get to page, I think it's 196 is what yesterday's section was supposed to be. Yep, so I want to get that done first. And this one fits for the prompt because while it's not the main characters, it does contain royalty. I actually don't know if those characters are going to be present in this book, to be honest, but they have been mentioned pretty frequently, so I'm hoping that we do run into them at some point, especially because they were some of my favorite characters from the first book. And also I would say that the shade of green that this cover is emerald. And then when I've done that, or if I roll a double, I will be moving on to A Touch of Darkness. Does anybody scream bougie bitch more than Hades? I can't think of anybody, especially because the setting of this in Hades Club, I will talk to you guys about this probably tomorrow morning. I'm still only 60 pages in, so I'm still very much in the introduction stage of it, but I will by the end of sprints tonight be a little bit more of the way through it. But the setting of Hades Club is pretty much the cover of this book, so there's a lot of like gold, I want to say gold ironwork, but if it's ironwork, is it gold? But lots of like, you know, this kind of gold stuff in the interior of the club. He's also super rich and his flower is a narcissus, so I feel like Hades definitely fits the vibe. So yeah, my goal for this 24-hour readathon is to read my 2 daily sections of this and to finish this, and quite honestly I feel like that is going to be pushing it, so we'll leave it at that for my goals for this time around, and if I exceed them then that will be a bonus. Unlikely, I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, it will be a bonus. Good afternoon. So sprints have already started. We've been going for nearly 2 hours, and I did fully intend to check in with you guys before sprint started today, but I did take Brie for a walk because when I do sprints all day on a Sunday, I like to utilize my time in the morning to get other things done. So we went for a walk and it was a really good walk for her. Actually, we went to the place where like we let her go off lead, and we met an old man and his dog, so she was running around like with this other dog, and the old man was like, he was one of those like super cute chatty old men, so we ended up talking to him for ages, which means I only got back home about 8 minutes before sprint started. But I am a significant way through A Touch of Darkness now. I'm 175 pages into it out of 308 because there's 30 pages of bonus content at the end of this. The book actually ends on page 308, so I only have 135 pages left, and I definitely think I'm going to get through it. And let me tell you, I'm having an amazing time with this. I'm really enjoying it. I think because I went into this expecting Persephone to make a lot of dumb bitch decisions, I actually expected her to be a lot worse than she is. So she's actually not too bad. Like, I'm tolerating her. She's fine. I like her even. I feel like I'm used to reading a lot of stories kind of like this, where the main characters are so much worse. Like, she's not on Sookie Stackhouse's level. Like, Sookie Stackhouse is like the queen of dumb bitch decisions, and Persephone is not up there. I also feel like making terrible decisions is perfectly on brand for a Persephone character anyway, because in the majority of retellings including Persephone, she's lived a very sheltered existence because her mother is very overprotective and overbearing, which obviously leads to people making bad decisions because they have very little real world experience. So she's not actually annoying me at all, which is great news. But this is reading to me, it's actually kind of reading a little bit like a novelization of Lore Olympus, which is one of my favorite comic series. It's a webcomic, which is once again a Hades and Persephone retelling, which you're gonna have the similarity between every kind of Greek myth retelling where the characters are the same, where they haven't like reimagined Hades and Persephone, where it's literally a retelling of Hades and Persephone. You are obviously gonna have those similarities, but I think a lot of the core characters in here are the same as in Lore Olympus, and the setting is very similar as well, because this is an urban fantasy. It is set in like a fictional version of our real world. So something happened where the gods all came down to the mortal realm and they reformed the world a little bit. So it's like an evolution of our world. And the city that this is set in is called New Athens. Now Persephone has come to the mortal realm in disguise as a mortal because she doesn't want everybody to know that she's a goddess. And she's going to school, she's about to graduate, and she started an internship with a news company called New Athens News. Now Hades runs a prestigious nightclub in here that's invitation only, and on the upper floor of this club he makes bargains with mortals. Now these seem to be very immoral because they seem impossible. Like he will give an addict what they want providing that they kick their addiction completely, which obviously is not something that's very easy to do. So a lot of times mortals end up selling their soul to Hades because they can't complete their end of the bargain. So Persephone's friend actually gets an invitation to the club and she asks Persephone to go with her, and she meets Hades without knowing who he is, and he offers to teach her how to play poker. And while they're playing poker she loses a few games, which I mean understandable, she doesn't know how to play, and at the end of their game Hades reveals who he is and says that as she has lost the games of poker she now owes him a debt, and he challenges her to create life in the underworld. On top of this, at Persephone's job she has decided that she wants to write an exposé piece on Hades, which nobody ever does because the majority of people are scared of him, but she wants to expose him and his immoral bargains with mortals. So obviously throughout the course of this, as Persephone is trying to make life in the underworld, which is something that is very hard for her because she actually doesn't have the goddess of spring powers. Everything that she touched, like every plant that she touches, withers and dies. So she is fighting a losing battle with this anyway, but throughout the course of her trying to fulfill this bargain to avoid having to live in the underworld, her and Hades grow closer. Now I will say that Hades he's hot. Like I'm always a Hades girly, okay? It doesn't matter what it is, I'm a sucker for Hades. But I have to say I am enjoying the iteration of Hades that is present in this book. He's bougie, he's rich, he's always wearing a suit with a black shirt, the buttons undone, like a glass of whiskey. He has long hair that he ties up in a bun. He is my kind of guy. The guy is suave. I'm a sucker. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this one. I will say that it's a very easy read, and while I am enjoying this, I will say that if you do look closely at it, there are like quite a few minor plot holes and conveniences, but that being said, it's still like a really entertaining read and I'm having a really good time with it. It feels a little bit like The Bargainer to me, pretty much I would say in the setting, because it does have that portal fantasy vibe, because as well as the mortal world, we do also have the underworld. So if you're a fan of The Bargainer, potentially will enjoy this one. I'm having a real good time with it. And I'm excited to get to the smutty stuff because like we've had little bits of romance throughout, but we're very much still in like the flirtation stage between Hades and Persephone, so I'm excited to see that progress. And I'm also interested to see where this book leaves off because it's actually a 4-book series, assumedly just following Hades and Persephone, which is my preferred story structure. So I am actually really excited to continue with this, providing that I continue to enjoy the rest of this book. So my plan for the rest of the readathon is still pretty much the same. I want to finish up A Touch of Darkness and read today's section of The Great Hunt, which I think is about 34 pages. And I do actually feel like I'm going to achieve that with a little bit of time to spare, so we'll see if that happens, number one, and if it does, we'll see what I'm moving on to next. So I have been successful. I read my daily page goal of The Great Hunt, and I have also finished A Touch of Darkness with 17 minutes to spare. Go me, but I obviously am not going to be reading anything else for this readathon. I did give this 3 stars, and my feelings on it are, I feel kind of mixed. I really enjoyed this. I had such a good time with this, but at the same time, it is so flawed. Like, there is so much wrong with this. There are so many plot holes, so many conveniences, so many things like plot threads that begin and go absolutely nowhere and are just never mentioned again, that I could not give this book higher than 3 stars. I did really love Hades. I loved the romance. My favorite thing about this is actually the world and the setting, and I think that Scarlett St. Clair did a really good job with that. I feel like a lot of this book is left for you to fill in the blanks. So if we go right back to the beginning, it's like you are expected, like you're reading a Hades and Persephone retelling, so Scarlett St. Clair relies on the fact that you know it's a Hades and Persephone retelling, and it's almost like Hades and Persephone are aware of it themselves. Like, they walk into the room together, they're like, I am Hades, you are Persephone, that means that we're going to be together. And so there's no like curiosity around their meeting. There's no, I feel like, mystery. It's like they're already gearing up for it to be a romance because they know the roles that they must fulfill. There is a scene in this where Persephone is going to a gala and she wants to avoid Demeter, which makes sense in terms of Demeter being this like overbearing, controlling parent. And Persephone's speaking to Hecate about it, and Hecate asks her if she has a mask for this ball. And Persephone says no, and Hecate says that she'll take care of it. So this mask arrives and Persephone puts it on, and therefore Demeter never sees her, but it doesn't explain, like, did Demeter not see her because their paths never crossed, because Persephone was hiding her face, because the mask was magical? Why didn't Demeter see her? Also, in terms of the scene in itself, like, Demeter arrived at this gala and it was very clear that she was pissed off, but then she was never mentioned again throughout that entire scene. It's almost like this book was longer and tons of scenes were cut, because there is also a character in here, like Persephone's roommate is dating this guy who's kind of toxic, and he shows his toxicity, then the roommate is dating somebody else. Persephone never has a conversation with her and is like, oh hey, are you okay, after this guy turned out to be horrific. Or like there's no discussion of Persephone's roommate saying like, hey, broke up with this guy, he's a bit of a dick. It's just he does something shitty and then the roommate is like dating someone else. So it feels like it's abridged or it's been heavily edited. But I feel like the actuality of it is that this was just written kind of all at once and wasn't revised all that much. So these things weren't kind of picked up on. So we just have plot threads that like start up and then dead end into absolutely nothing. And I feel like it's trying to create a sense of realism. Like realistically, yes, Persephone would be trying to avoid Demeter, but then it's kind of just like dropped and forgotten about, and we never see the follow through. Like, I just feel like it needs to be mentioned again. All it had to be was in that gala scene. All it had to be was Persephone clocking Demeter from the other side of the room and being like, oh shit, I need to avoid my mother, and turning the other way, just to like kind of bring it back around to a realistic inclusion in this story, if that makes sense. It did as well. The further I got into this, the way that we were speeding through these plot points, it did read a little bit like fan fiction. And you know what, actually, the sex scenes in here were also abridged. They felt very incomplete. You know how normally you read a romance and the first sex scene is quite detailed, maybe a few pages, maybe the second one is as well, but the more you get in, the kind of like less detailed they are, and then every so often you'll have one that's more like fully fledged. This was like all of the secondary sex scenes in a romance book. It's like we never had the fully fleshed out detailed ones. They were all just the ones that come later in the novel, where like it's establishing the fact that the two characters are really into each other, but it doesn't take the time to explain it because then it becomes repetitive. I really liked it though. I just don't think it was very good. So that's 3 stars. This one was a gift from Linda, so thank you so much, Linda, for gifting this one to me, and also thank you so much to Kim for recommending it, because I did have a very good time with this one. So that is my it's my 3rd book for this vlog, for the Bookopoly vlog down, but it is the one that fulfills the 4th role. In terms of The Great Hunt, I do need to sit down and tell you a little bit about this at some point, but I'm just trucking along with it right now. I'm 230 pages in, which is pretty much bang on a 1/3 of the way through this. So yeah, we're making progress, and I'm very happy with my decision to read this alongside the rest of this vlog, because I feel, although my only worry actually is that I feel like I'm progressing with the rest of the book so quickly that I'm gonna have tons of this left to read when I'm done with the rest of my roles, but we'll see if that actually does become a reality. And until then, let's do another roll. So the lighting's kind of terrible, but Our last prompt was viewer recommends. So of this entire side, I feel like I'm pretty happy with whatever comes up. But ideally for me, it would be fantasy romance or mood read. But I do also have a sci-fi on my TBR if that does come up. So this is our 5th roll, hopefully out of 6. And let's see what it's gonna be. 5. Oh, this is amazing. This is a book from my 2022 TBR, which obviously it's 2023 now. So this has like auto updated to a book from my 2023 TBR. So I think I know which one I'm going with. And there were so many amazing options on this. Like I did a really amazing job with my 2023 TBR this year. And the one that I'm going with actually feels like the least attractive option. But like, I don't want you to think that I don't want to read this book because I do. It's actually a 5-star prediction. I'm estimating a minimum of 4 stars for this book. It's just because I have to read it that it's the least attractive option right now. And there's so many other amazing books on here. There is The Bands of Mourning, which I don't particularly want to read. I could get it out of the way. There's Iron Gold by Pierce Brown, which is on my TBR, but it's just the lowest priority of all of the books on there. I also have Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, which I have an arc of and I'm desperate to get to. Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, which I've been dying to read for a while now. But the one that I'm going with, essentially I've just worked myself into such a pickle with my TBR where I allowed myself to get behind last month, and so I'm paying for it this month, which means that I kind of, where applicable, I have to go with books on my TBR. So the one that we're going to be going with is Blood Mercy by Vila Roth, which is the first book in the Blood Grace series, and this one is my Patreon book club book for the months of February and March. So for my Patreon book club, it is a fantasy romance book club where we read through entire series, and for every installment in the series I make a spoilery vlog that I post on Patreon. So we're starting a new series. We've just finished the 4 Horsemen series by Laura Thalassa, and this one I'm very excited about. I have heard that the first 200 pages is pretty slow, but after that people just seem to be getting so into it, and it also comes highly recommended by a couple of my friends. So this one I believe is heavily political. It's a very slow-paced, I feel, fantasy romance, and it surrounds vampires, but I've heard that it is a very like unique take on vampires. So our main character in here is the bastard son of a king, and for the good of the kingdom she has decided to negotiate with the Hesperenes, who are these vampiric creatures, and this is forbidden because the Hesperenes are hated. But the main character, is he called Leo? Yeah, who is a diplomat for his people, I've heard is actually a cinnamon roll. I am a little bit worried about reading 2 600-page books side by side, both of which I'm currently making spoilery videos of, so I'm gonna have to juggle the clips for these 2 vlogs and this vlog and try not to turn my brain to mush in the process. But I have heard really good things about this. I've been meaning to start the series for a while. This was actually sent to me by Vila Roth, so thank you very much to Vila for that. And it's signed and personalized as well. The little dedication thing in here says, Becca, maybe goddess's eyes light your path, and it's signed and dated. Have I bitten off more than I can chew? Stay tuned and find out. What do I have 5?
Starting to think that I do things way too differently to take this seriously. And all of the times that we said we go to therapy, but still they never been. Yeah. But things don't change, they stay the same. I've gotta go my own way. Yeah, things don't change. I've gotta do better than you for.
Good afternoon, guys. I have had a very productive day. I kicked off this morning by making the second batch of candles to go towards the next restock, which I'm actually hoping is going to be this Friday, fingers crossed. And I also designed the label for one of the 2 new candles that's going to be joining that restock. So everything is ready for me to photograph those tomorrow and get them onto the website, which I gotta say actually has been making me a bit grumpy because my least favorite thing is photography. I hate product photography, but the plan is to get that sorted tomorrow, do all of the website admin, announce the restock, and then also potentially photograph that ribbon so that I can also try and sell some of that and get that out of my house, because I've spent my afternoon cleaning and the only rooms I have left to do, I need to finish the kitchen and I need to do my office, which I'm planning on doing on either tomorrow or Wednesday. But it does not matter how immaculate the rest of my office is. When all of that ribbon is in there, it's still gonna look like a mess, so I want it out of my house. So I need to just suck it up and get some photography done so that I can get rid of that and it can cease to be a problem. But yeah, I spent my afternoon cleaning and listening to Taylor Swift, which actually, if you or anybody that you know has tickets for Taylor Swift for either of the Denver dates and you don't want them anymore, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you don't want them anymore, hit me up, because I'm very, very interested. I'm looking specifically for either the Field or the Lower Bowl area for either the Friday or the Saturday. But yes, I am in search of those tickets. So like, if you do have tickets, just keep me in mind in case anything happens and you can't go, and DM me on Instagram if you have any information. But I am like desperately in search of those right now, and I spent like the majority of last night looking for them. But anyway, I haven't read anything. That's not why I'm here. I read like one chapter of The Great Hunt and one chapter of Blood Mercy since I spoke to you last. But what I do have is an Amazon parcel, and I have opened this up just to see what it was, and then I noticed it was a book and I stopped. But this is from Ash, and I know that it is because it's always Ash. And yeah, this says book 2, just another book for your TBR from Ash, and I know what this is. This is going to be the sequel, isn't it, to yeah, A Touch of Ruin by Scarlett St. Clair. Thank you so much, Ash. Like I said yesterday, the book wasn't good, but I had such a good time, and I'm really, really excited to continue. Oh, darling, I would burn this world for you. Daddy Hades really coming through. But yeah, obviously this is the sequel to the book that I read yesterday. There is a series of books from Hades' perspective though, and I'm not sure if in the reading order you're supposed to like alternate between, what is she called? Persephone. Oh my god. What a dumb bitch moment. And they say Persephone's the dumb bitch. I feel like I'm the dumb bitch in the room right now. But yeah, they alternate between Persephone and Hades' perspectives, and I'm pretty sure that I'm supposed to read the Hades book next. But I've been burned before by books that are the same, but from the love interest perspective, that literally add nothing. So if you have read this series and you've read the Hades books, let me know if they're worth it or whether I should just continue with the main series. Because if it's literally just scene for scene the same book from Hades' perspective, then I can tell you that I'm less than interested. But thank you so much to Ash for providing A Touch of Ruin. It's the traditionally published one now, because this series has got picked up in the UK, which I don't mind because it's still a buttery soft cover. But I really don't like that it says an international edition across the front here and also on the spine. But yeah, thank you so much to Ash, and hopefully I can get to this sooner rather than later. I mean, it is a sequel, so there's hope, I guess.
You're all about
Good morning. I'm about to head out. I'm heading into York to pick Ashley up because she's coming to visit for a couple of days, which is really exciting because she's actually going to be meeting Brie for the first time, which is kind of the purpose of the trip. Well, it's to see me, of course, as well, but also she is a gem and she has agreed to pet sit for us while we're in New York in May. So I'm really excited for her to meet Brie. Ashley's a cat person, but I feel like they're going to get on, you know, because they're both Pisces. They both like long outdoor walks. They both like putting their bare feet into water sources outside. They like frolicking through mud. They can both be very excitable. I think it's going to be a grand old time. But before, like, Ashley's train only gets in at like 3 or 3:30, but I need to go to Waterstones because I still don't have Before We Were Hanged, or Before They Are Hanged, or Before We Are Hanged, whatever the second first law book is. I need it, and I'm doing that thing that I do that's really annoying where I'm being an opportunist, so I'll only buy it if I see it in a shop. If I don't see it in a shop, I won't buy it until I need it. So I've already checked 2 Waterstones when we went to Manchester like a couple of weeks ago and couldn't find it there. So now we're going to try York, and I also need to get just like a couple of bits like toiletries, TP sticks, more floss, that kind of boring stuff. So I'm gonna go into York and do that, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of a check-in. I don't actually have too much to report. I'm like 35 pages into Blood Mercy, if that, because I have not been reading very much and it takes me a long time to read The Great Hunt, or like in comparison to other series. So with the limited time I've had to read, I've been focusing on this, which means that I'm like barely getting through my daily section. I'm not getting around to picking up Blood Mercy, but I'm 334 pages into The Great Hunt, in which chapter 23, and I have 20-ish more pages to read of today's section, which I'm hoping I can squeeze in tonight. But I thought I'd come in and just tell you a little bit about The Great Hunt, because I don't think I've actually mentioned it so far. And when we do have a long vlog like this, I try to keep on top of the editing so that I know exactly what I've said, but I have not done that with this vlog, and I have like 2 hours of footage, so I don't think I've spoken about The Great Hunt, but I am enjoying this one. It starts off like very much exactly where the last book left off. I'm saying that actually a couple of weeks have passed, but the characters are still in the same location and they're very much still coming to terms with what happened at the end of the first book. So this actually gets straight into one of the most interesting elements of this series for me, which are the Aes Sedai, which are essentially like a group of sorceresses. They are the wielders of the one power in this world, and they're also like, I guess, the governing body of the magic, and the opinion on them across the world is very varied. Some people love them, but the majority of people hate them. So we get straight into some Aes Sedai politics, which I'm very much interested in, and the further we get into this, we're getting more like, I guess, different facets of the Aes Sedai, including the place that they're from, which is very much like reminiscent of a magic school as seen through the perspective of the characters that are experiencing it. Now, it is still Wheel of Time, so there are still like some slow parts in here, and I feel like as I'm getting through the middle section, we're getting into a little bit more traveling scenes, and Rand, to me, as a perspective, is still my least favorite, which is very frustrating because I know that he's going to be the dominant perspective through this series because he is like the main character, while the other, I guess you'd say 4 main characters are very relevant. It's very much like 50-60% of the book is Rand's perspective, and the other 40%, potentially less, is split between all of the other characters. So it is frustrating that I'm enjoying Rand's perspective the least, but because this book was like, I think this one would be like 1990, first published in Great Britain in 1991. It's very much like in the early days of the Chosen One trope, so it's not doing too much different when we come to this Chosen One figure. So it's just reading as like something that I've read a million times before, where obviously like this is the origin of that kind of trope, or like the early days of that trope, so it's understandable why it's not pushing any boundaries. It just, to me, makes Rand's perspective a little bit less interesting. He's also quite annoying, but I do think and I do expect him to undergo a lot of character growth throughout the series, which I am excited to see. I just want a little bit more of the supporting characters because they seem to be on a little bit more of an interesting path, in my opinion. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm at about the halfway point now. Still feel like if I carry on, I'm gonna finish this by the end of the month, but I don't know if it's something to do with my skewed perspective of time, because the way I view the month is based on my video schedule and what videos I have to have ready by some point, and the next video that I have to film is my TBR. So I feel like the end of the month is really, really close, where realistically, I think I still have a week. That's not long though. I am right. That isn't very long. So yeah, we'll see if I get to this by the end of the month. I still also have 2 book club books and also 2 Patreon picks supposedly to get through before the end of March. So wish me luck. I don't think it's happening, but all I can do is try at this point.
Starting to live in the moment while you're on cloud 9. Yeah, just take your time.
It's just gonna go like that, I swear, right?
Yeah. Oh, baby, what? What's she done? Did she find you? She's like, I don't understand why you do this. Hi. I just wanna let you guys know that you can ignore my earlier call out for Taylor Swift tickets because I got them and I was so excited. Ashley's not coming, she's just very supportive, but I'm going to see Taylor Swift. I love that for me too. I'm gonna cry. Not right now. At Taylor Swift. I cried when she came out in the 1975, so I wouldn't be surprised if I cried. No, I'm gonna cry for 3.5 hours. Poor Kelsey. But yeah, I just thought I'd update you guys on that because I'm very excited. I nearly had a panic attack, which Lizzo. Lizzo lyrics at the beginning of, what song is it?
Hold that thought.
Girl, I'm about to have a panic attack. I did the work.
That was me. That was me getting those tickets. But yeah, I just thought I'd let you know that, and I'm gonna go be excited and then be in bed because it's late.
I must say this is all rather odd to me. So yeah, you're an all-male preparatory. Leave you open for this sort of thing. No, of course not.
Don't snatch. Ah. Ah. You'll not have it. Good girl.
I finally have a reading update for you guys, and I know it's been a while, but first, actually, were you jump scared by my forehead? Because I feel like I am every time I see it. I'm like, wow, I forgot that you were under there, but I keep sleeping on my fringe because I straightened my hair yesterday, as you can probably tell, and I woke up this morning and like my fringe was like bent and pointing forward, so I was like, you know what, we'll go the headband route today. But I am reading finally. I feel like I really stumble and struggle right at the beginning of a book because obviously like motivation is not there as much because you don't really know anything at that point. You don't know anyone. There's no like real connection between you and the book when you start, so I feel like I'm always slower at the start of a new book anyway. And then this one was just so hard to get into, which I did know it was going to be going into it because this is obviously my Patreon book club and we're coming to the end of the reading period for it now, so a lot of people have already read it or at least started it, and I went into this fully aware that the first 200 to 250 pages were going to be slow and they were going to be rough. But you all know that I'm not unfamiliar with a slow read, and I'm reading this faster than I'm reading this right now. So this one I can't actually tell you what it's about right now, but I am 147 pages into it. I think I read about 70 pages of it last night. I think when I got to the page like 125 mark is where it started to pick up and I started to enjoy it a little bit more. And I feel like the marker of that for me was when the two main characters started to actually interact within the book, because the rough story of this is that this is the bastard daughter of the king, and for some reason she wants to make contact with a Hesperine, and the Hesperines have come because of some like ancient treaty that the humans aren't upholding as far as I can tell, and they've come like for negotiations. So the beginning of this book is like establishing her a little bit as a character, and then the Hesperines arriving at this kingdom. But this is heavily political and it does it in a very not handholdy way, so it kind of just throws you in. There's like one scene with Leo very early on in this book in the first like 70 pages where he's sat in a room with his family, or like the Hesperines that have come to this kingdom. They're called, like, some of them he refers to as aunt and uncle, but I don't know if that's like any type of blood relation or just like the way that their society operates. But it's just like they're having a conversation about random cousins that he has, as though I have any idea who these people are. So it's rough. It's rough getting into this, but now that they've started to interact, I am enjoying it slightly better. I do feel as well that this has a very formal writing style. It's a very kind of like royal court kind of fantasy right now, with a very formal and like historical-esque writing style. But I'm aware at this point that I'm running out of month. I too many books in too little months. So I'm glad that I broke the barrier on this because I need to get some reading done. I am currently on track to finish this by the end of the month, which is wild. And I did not think, like I really thought with this vlog that I would finish all of my other books and then have to like get through however much I had less of this. At this rate, we're finishing this before we're finishing this, and that is not on. I need to get a wriggle on. So I've done a bunch of candle stuff this morning. Candles went on sale on Friday, and I have like all of the Etsy orders are going out this afternoon. So I'm actually going to spend the rest of my afternoon just reading as much as possible and also editing, because this has been, it's a 2-week vlog so far, so this as well as chunky books, we also have a chunky vlog. So I'm hoping, my plan is to read a section of this because it's actually like I'm at the beginning of a section now, and these sections are marked in days until the spring equinox. So I think I looked last night, the next section is about 35 pages, I want to say, but then the one after is a little bit longer at like 50 pages. So I feel like for every section of this that I read, I'm going to read a chapter of The Great Hunt, because I have already read my daily like 30 whatever pages of this. So I'm just going to be like chipping away at both of them side by side and then also doing editing alongside that. It's a convoluted way of getting through it, but it breaks things up for me and it really like speeds up my productivity, because instead of feeling like I'm wading through mud and I've been doing something for hours and I'm not getting any further, I'm chipping away at like multiple things at once. And I also have the same set of goals for tomorrow as well, so I'm gonna just carry on working through that. I do have to go through my website orders tomorrow, but aside from that, it's just going to be chipping away at these and also chipping away at editing this vlog. In terms of The Great Hunt, I am enjoying it. I am, but it feels very much like a repeat of the first book, which is, in terms of subject matter and content, I'm enjoying this one a little bit more, but that is being like brought down by the fact that it does just feel a lot like a repeat of the first book structurally, even to the point now where I am 540 pages into it, so I have about 120 pages left. And like with Eye of the World, it's gotten to a point where like we very slowly moved through the story at this point, and it's been like exploring the world and the cultures, and we've gone to different cities than we went to in the first book. But now we've hit a point where like all of a sudden we need to, like the book needs to have a point, so the timeline is being accelerated, and instead of like slowly traveling around, they're like finding magical ways to, like literal magical ways, not magical as in like they're coming out of nowhere, but they're like in a hurry to get somewhere to bring the book to a close. So I'm hoping that I will enjoy the end of this a little bit more than I enjoyed the end of the first one, because that was a hot mess. I mean, I feel like I will, because I think Robert Jordan has acknowledged that he himself did not like the way that he brought the first book to a close. So I'm definitely expecting it to be done a little bit differently in here, but just generally I don't like Jordan's action scenes. So I'm hoping that we have at least a little bit less of that in this one. But yeah, fingers crossed these will be finished soon, and then we can move on to our final roll of the month, which I had a look at the board and I don't know how I'm feeling about what's potentially coming up, but we'll see when we get there. Hello, I am looking a little bit greasy, but don't worry about it. I've just got back from my nail and my wax appointment. But on my way out, I honestly wish I had caught my genuine reaction to this, because the postman had pushed something through the door. So when I was on the way to my nail appointment, which by the way, this is my fresh set, very bright. I really, really like it. It's a little bit different on each hand. But on the way out, I saw this parcel. I actually honestly thought it was stock or something. I was confused, but I thought it was stock that I'd ordered. So I just opened it, and who is responsible for this? Who sent me a spoon with Taylor Swift's face on it? I'm not mad about it. It's actually like my new prized possession, but this is potentially one of the most bizarre gifts, bizarre in a good way, but one of the most obscure gifts that I've ever received. So if you are responsible, do let me know. I mean, I have put it in my Patreon Discord, but nobody's come forward yet and said it was them. But thank you, whoever you are. I'm not sure where I'm gonna put her, but she will go in a place of honor, because I never knew I needed this, but I do. So yeah, whoever you are, it is much appreciated, and it definitely both shocked me and put a huge smile on my face today. Good morning. I have to film, edit and post my April Realmathon / Magical Readathon TBR today. So I'm all dressed up. I feel like today's look is very much like reserved housewife at a funeral, and I'm about it. It's not a bad look to have. So I did get, actually, just as a little aside, I got a lip gloss. I got the Fenty Heat one in Glow. I think Fenty Glow Heat, so I think that the shade is Glow. If you're wondering what lip gloss I'm wearing, this is the one. We're going back to the Y2K trends, which I gotta say, I hated them while I was there. There was nothing less practical than lip gloss, but I mean, fall in line or get left behind, I guess. But I do need to film that TBR, but I also realized that I do kind of have to film an update for every vlog that I'm working on. So I do want to talk to you guys first off about Blood Mercy by Vila Roth, because I'm having a great time now. So I still couldn't really tell you what the actual plot of this one is, but I am flying through it now. I did not want to put it down last night. Everybody that I've spoken to talks about how this is like a slow burn, like it starts off fine and then you end up really loving it. And I can tell you what makes you love it, like what the point where that obsession that a lot of people have really kicks in. It's blood drinking. I have never well, I have probably, but that is the hottest vampire scene that I have ever read in my life. And in terms of vampires as a construct, the vampires in this book I feel like are missing a key part of what makes vampires so alluring, which is the danger element, because the take on vampires that we have in here is that they are better beings than humans, and the whole point of vampires is that they're dark, they're brooding, they're soulless, they can only come out at night. And there's that element of danger with a vampire, like if you allow a vampire to drink from you, like are they gonna like completely drain your blood? Whereas all of those kind of like hazards and risks are eliminated in this book. And also we have a cinnamon roll love interest, which is not my preference, but what, damn was I sweating last night. So in this one we are following the bastard daughter of the king, who is called Cassia, and we're also following a Hesperine who is this vampiric creature called Leo. The Hesperines have come to, is it Tenebra, which is the kingdom that Cassia's father rules, to uphold or renegotiate this ancient oath that the Hesperines had with, I don't know whether it was with the Tenebrans or with like all of the mortal kingdoms, but they've come back to renegotiate this because over the years like the treaty has slipped and the Hesperines really want peace. But because they're vampiric creatures, they're seen as like horrific and monstrous. So Cassia actually wants to get close to a Hesperine for a reason that is like, you discover why a little bit later in the book, but it would be a spoiler to say. And so she negotiates with her father to be allowed to come to court with him when the court is moving to like a different palace, when usually she'd want to stay as far away from him as possible because she wants to get close to a Hesperine. So the majority of this story actually from around the page 100 mark, which I do feel like the first 80 pages of this are such a drag, but by the time I got to around page like 125 I was really starting to get invested. But the majority of this book is conversations between Leo and Cassia at night in the Queen's Gardens as they are learning more about each other and their cultures. And obviously, as you guys know, this is a romance. The writing style in here is very, very formal, and it's a struggle to get used to, and on top of how slow everything is, especially throughout the beginning, it was definitely a rough ride. But from the page 125 mark, I've just been getting more and more into this as the story goes on, and I still couldn't tell you what the plot is. There is like a distant plague or like a recurring plague and like negotiations for medicine for that. I feel like the overarching plot of the series is potentially going to be the Tenebrans going to war and like the mortals going to war with the Hesperines, and Cassia kind of like being the reason for it, even though she hates her father and her father is not like overtly abusive. Like it's a very like emotional kind of abuse that we see in here. So she avoids him as much as she can, which hinges on something that like happened in the past as well, and the way that he's treated certain people. He's not a good guy like by any means. I feel like he's going to use Cassia as an excuse to go to war, and I feel like that could be a major element of the plot throughout the series. But so far in this book I actually don't know what the point of this book is. I'm hoping that, as with a lot of first books in series, we come to a place, you know, like how a lot of first books in series you could stop after that book, like it makes it clear that there's more plot to come, but if you didn't want to continue, like there is an ending. I'm hoping that this book ends like that, but I'm a little bit scared that it's actually going to end on some sort of like cliffhanger, or like everything goes terribly wrong and that is where book 2 starts, because then I'm going to be desperate to continue. Which actually, for Realmathon, if you're participating, which I'm co-hosting, if you're on Team Enya and if your name is Becca You can get 86 points for your team by reading Blood Solace because it hits like the maximum bonus points plus a whole ton of stuff. I mean, if your name isn't Becca, you can still get like 75 points. But if your name is Becca, Blood Solace will get you a whole ton of points for your team. So like, I'm not opposed to continuing. I also plan to read a ton in April because it's the last month of the year where I don't have a ton. I mean, I have a break in June and August, but April is like the calm before the storm essentially. So I'm hoping to get a lot read. So I am 398 pages into this, and I 100% think I'm going to be finishing this tomorrow. When we get to a point where I have like 100 pages left though, I am going to do another roll because the final prompt, hopefully, fingers crossed, the final prompt for this video will be voted on by my patrons, so that will give them like time to actually vote before it comes to me picking up the next book. And something else that I'm going to finish tomorrow is The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. So I am 602 pages into this. It's taken a turn that I didn't expect, especially because it seems not necessarily out of nowhere, like the possibility has kind of been there, but it's like the characters weren't in any position to have ended up in the predicament that they are until like 40 pages ago. So it seems kind of sudden, but I didn't expect it. So I'm interested to see how that's going to play out because I do feel like it's going to be resolved in this book, whereas I feel like it should have potentially happened at the end and like led into book 3, but whatever. I have like 67 pages left. Today's section of this is going to take me to 633, and then I'll finish the last section tomorrow, and these will potentially be my final, well, definitely be my final 2 books for the month, I want to say. That's my reading update, but 2 very assumedly exciting parcels have just arrived for me this morning, both of which are from publishers. So we have one from Pan Macmillan and one from Parallel.net, which if you guys don't know, I think Parallel.net is like a distribution service or a warehouse that publishers typically use. Like if I get arcs, they tend to come from Parallel.net. So if you guys know specifically what they are and I was like wrong, feel free to correct me, I guess. So we'll go with the Pan Macmillan first. I am expecting a couple of arcs, but this is speedy. Like I wasn't expecting them until next week. Oh my God. Next week at least, because this is like quite advanced as well. But the first one is Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. I am so hyped for this. Oh my God, it's a different color as well. Like the proper color, like the actual color of the cover, as you can see there, is a mint green and the arc is purple. So this one is the one that was in my anticipated 2023 releases that has an amazing synopsis that oh, it's different. The one on, do we have the Goodreads one here? The Goodreads synopsis is an extension of this, but it says like the book is about an estate agent, only she's a vampire, the house on sale is haunted, and its ghost was murdered. So the Goodreads synopsis goes on like a little bit longer than that, but it seems wild. It seems very eccentric, but in a very good way. And I'm so excited to read more from Olivia Blake because she seems to just be like dipping in and out of genres, and it's fascinating to me. And I think the books that she's writing, knowing her writing style, I feel like they're going to be amazing. So this one is about a vampire who is also a real estate agent. She finds out that the house that she's trying to sell is haunted, and so she gets in a medium to exorcise the ghost, but the medium is a fraud, even though they're also the godson of death. So is it romantic? Potentially. It says that they're drawn to a quest that neither wants nor expects, and they'll need the help of a demonic personal trainer, a sharp-voiced angel, and a love-stricken reaper to navigate the intricacies of life, death, and everything in between. I am hyped. The release date on this is the 17th of August, so I will potentially be reading this in July, if not sooner, because I'm very excited. But thank you so much to Black Crow for sending this one my way. And then the other one is potentially from Solaris, if it's what I think it is / expect it to be. There's something else in this, and it feels very much like a metal straw. Just based on sound, it could be literally anything else. It's not a metal straw, but it is the book that I thought it was going to be. I love this. So this is a tiny little metal pomegranate pot. I love this. Is stunning. And the book in question is chunkier than I expected because this box felt very thin, but that is The Pomegranate Gate by Ariel Kaplan. This is upside down. So this one is a special limited edition proof, which I actually didn't know. And the front says Two Worlds Divided, and on the back it says By a Pomegranate Gate. This one, all I really know about it is that it is set in, I think, 15th century Spain. So the synopsis on this one says, Toba Perez can speak, but she can't shout. She can walk, but she can't run, and she can write in 5 languages with both hands at the same time. Naftali Cresques dreams every night of an orange-eyed stranger. When awake, he sees things that aren't real, and he carries a book he can never lose and never read. When the Queen of Sepharad orders all the nation's Jews to leave or convert, Toba and Naphtali are forced to flee, but an unlucky encounter leaves them both separated from their caravan. Lost in the wilderness, Toba follows an orange-eyed stranger through a mysterious gate in a pomegranate grove, leaving Naphtali behind. With a single step, Toba enters an ancient world that mirrors her own. There she finds that her fate and Naphtali's are bound to an ancient conflict threatening to destroy both realms. So this one is slightly outside of my comfort zone, being a historical fantasy, but the reason why I wanted it is because it seems like it's going to be a similar kind of story to like the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden or Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, but with a different like folklore inspiration. So thank you very much to Solaris/Rebellion Publishing for sending this one my way. And the release date on this one is the 20th of July, so potentially I'm hoping to get to this one in June. So those were two stunning proofs that I'm very, very excited to get to, but something that I'm not excited, well I am actually, I enjoy filming my TBR. I need to film my TBR is what I'm trying to say before I end up not getting it up today. And it is the final day of the month, so I'm eager to finish some books, and the unthinkable has actually happened, and that is that I have finished The Great Hunt before I finished the rest of the books of this video, which I truly just did not see coming. The way that my pace has been faster moving through The Great Hunt than it has through Blood Mercy is truly unfathomable. But speaking of Blood Mercy, before I talk about this, I am 100% going to try and get that finished for today. I have, I think, about 220-ish pages left, and when I get really into it, then I'm really into it. It's just my focus was just not there last night, and I didn't do as much reading through the day as I have been doing through the rest of the week, so I just generally made less progress. But I am going to be doing Patreon sprints today very, very soon. Actually, I need to get that set up, but I just wanted to get this book out of the way first so that I could dedicate those sprints to finishing Blood Mercy. But The Great Hunt, I can confirm that by the time we actually got to the end, it was different enough from Eye of the World. Like, I felt like it was going to go in the same direction, but I felt like the pacing throughout the end of this was a lot better. I feel like the fight scenes are definitely much improved. I still don't love them, especially when it comes to like the recurring meetings between Rand and like the main antagonist. I don't really like the way that they're done at all, but generally I would say that the action scenes throughout here were a lot better. We have a lot more from the girls, and I think that they were the shining stars of this book for me, especially where we had those like magic school elements throughout. A couple of one of my main kind of, I guess, issues with this is that I don't feel like this series has enough direction at this point. I feel like it's very meandering. I feel like the characters spend a lot of time just like waiting for things to happen to them and then reacting instead of being proactive and actually like them interacting with the plot. Like the plot is constantly throwing things at them. And I feel like based on the character progression that we get throughout this one, I do feel like there is potential for that to be improved going throughout the series, as especially the central character of Rand grows into his role as like this chosen one figure. But at this point, it's just a little bit too reactionary for me that it is irritating me a little bit. And I would say that I don't feel like this book in particular advanced the plot enough. I feel like this whole book just brought Rand to a point to have some character development in the last 20 pages. That being said, some of the new political factions we had introduced in here, I am very interested in, although I am confused about. And while we had some resolution to that, I am hoping that there is going to be like more of that in the books to come. I imagine it is, because it feels like, why would you introduce this whole new group just to remove them from the equation really quickly? I'm definitely hoping in the sequel for more of Tar Valon, and I feel like at this point there are a lot of these political factions, different groups of people, and also the way that like cultures differ throughout the world. There's just like a lot of different groups and a lot going on, and I want to kind of see more balance, because there's characters in Eye of the World that were like pretty main or like prominent side characters that had like one chapter in this book. There's a group called the Children of the Light who oppress and torture magic users that were not heavily present in book one, but they did play a part in the plot, and then they were kind of present in here, but in a way that it kind of like, it didn't feel organic for them to be involved in the things that they were involved in, because they had been largely absent throughout the most of this. So I guess there's a lot of elements in here, and I'm interested in all of those elements, and I like that we have so much depth and complexity to the world. book, but I don't feel like Robert Jordan has a good balance so far throughout these books. So I want everything. I kind of understand now that I'm another book deeper into this series why I have heard it compared to Tolkien, because it's like there are fantasy authors that create the world as they write the story and only bring relevant information in, and then there's authors like Tolkien and Martin and Jordan that create the world and then put the characters in it, so there is more to the world than is actually relevant to the story, and that is what this is feeling like at the minute. And while I adore writers like that, because you can tell that everything is like super thought out and it makes sense, and there's like a depth and a richness to the world that you don't get in stories, or that you don't get in some stories where the world is built around the plot. It is very much feeling like we have a few, not necessarily loose threads, but we're not getting the kind of balance that I would like to fully understand all of these different groups and factions, and then also for me for it to like kind of make sense where they are relevant to the plot in this one. But I did give it 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I would say very slightly more than Eye of the World. I think in terms of the books standing on their own and the contents of the books, I enjoyed this one more than Eye of the World, but it didn't progress the plot as much as I would like it to for the second book in this series. So for that, it's kind of like on level pegging with Eye of the World for me. That is our 4th book down for this vlog, with our 5th one coming very, very shortly, hopefully before the end of the day. But what I'm going to do now is, instead of waiting until I have 100 pages left of Blood Mercy or until I finish Blood Mercy, I'm actually going to do our hopefully fingers crossed final roll now, so that poll can just be going up on Patreon in the background. And whenever I finish Blood Mercy, we'll cycle back around and we will see which book has won. I'm just eager to get that poll up, and then I can also announce the sprints, because I don't like double posting on Patreon, but I've kind of backed myself into a corner where like I have to post twice today, so I just want to do it and get it out of the way. So our 5th prompt was 2023 TBR. And I have to be honest, everything that is coming up, like in the big colour blocks, is not ideal. So I guess I just don't really care what I land on. Whatever it is, we'll make it work. But the only like good, I guess, space coming up would be like Moodread. So what is hopefully going to be our 6th and final roll of this vlog, 8. 6, 7, 8, and that is a romance. So I thought that was going to be more difficult than it turned out to be, because we are obviously going into April tomorrow, which is likely when I'm actually going to start this book, and I have 3 romances on my April TBR. So the only real difficulty I had was finding a 4th. I do have 1 magical readathon prompt that's currently unfilled, which I was aiming for, which is to read a book that is between 389 and 415 pages. So I did try and find a romance that fit that criteria, but none of the, I guess, most hyped contemporary romance I have on my shelves was within that page limit. And I could have gone deeper. I could have looked at some of the like less popular romance that I have, but based on one particular book going into this poll, I feel like I know what's going to win. So in the end, I didn't see the point in like struggling for a specific page count when I feel like, unless I pick another reasonably hyped book, the winner's going to be like a straight shot. So I'm not going to tell you too much about the plots of these, because I'm obviously only going to be reading one, but the one that I think is a sure win is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, which I currently have an arc of, and the release date on this is like mid-June, I think. The other 2 off my April TBR are The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danan. I want to read this one because Rosie Danan is an author who's going to be at Rare, and also this is the Cliterature Book Club book for April, which I am a guest host on. The other one is another arc from Bloomsbury. Thank you very much to Bloomsbury for sending this one to me, and that one is Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. This one is a YA like King Arthur retelling romance, and then this one I do like, this isn't strictly contemporary romance, but I feel like the essence of this is going to be contemporary romance, but with a little bit of like an alternative setting. And then the final one, the one that I tried to get that was a relatively hyped romance to compete, I guess, with Love Theoretically, is The Bride Test by Helen Huang, which is the 2nd book in the Kiss Quotient series. So I will now go and pop all of these. Oh my god, this is great because I have 2 with blue covers going up and 2 with yellow. That's really satisfying. But I will go and pop these in a poll, and when I finish Blood Mercy, we will find out which one is the winner. But I do have a really strong feeling that it will be Love Theoretically, and if any can compete, it's going to be The Bride Test. Good afternoon. I spent my Saturday morning finishing off Blood Mercy because alas I did not quite get around to completing it last night. I did only have 30 pages left to read this morning though, so I am counting it towards March, and because I read 620 of these pages obviously in March, and I really enjoyed this one. It wasn't quite a 5-star for me though. I did end up giving it 4. The last 100 pages of this I thoroughly enjoyed. The pace really picked up a lot and it had this like real sense of urgency within the plot as well. And then the way that this left off has me desperate to continue on with the series, although I don't know. Obviously I know overall that it's going to end assumedly with a happily ever after, but I'm not sure because this follows, like all of this series follows the same couple. I'm really interested to see how the next few books play out, especially given the set of circumstances we have at the end here. The reason why this was a 4 and not a 5 for me is that I did just find the fact that the middle 300 to 350 pages of this book is just a series of conversations between Leo and Cassia, and while I did, that's the point where like I started to enjoy the book. Eventually I felt like it just dragged on a little bit too long, especially with this formal writing style, which I don't mind and I did enjoy, but it definitely gave it like kind of a historical romance feel for me, and I did feel like throughout some of the sections in here we had a little bit too much talk and a little bit too little action. But I really like the world that Vila Roth has created in here, and while I wasn't sure of how the plot was going to play out throughout all of this book up until right at the very end, I have a decent idea of how the plot's going to play out for the rest of the series, and it's definitely something that I'm interested in. I feel like it's going to be a kind of war plot line, but the main players that we follow within this war are going to be like political figures, so it's not going to be like a battlefield warfare. It's going to be like royal court and like espionage kind of warfare, which I am definitely here for. So really glad that I read this first Alpha Ho book down. I will confess I have already started the next book, the book that we're using to fulfill the romance prompt, because it was very clear from very early on what was going to win. We knew what was going to win. It's Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I'm not very far into it. I'm on like page 6. But I'll tell you like how much it won by. It's like an overwhelming amount, and the thing that I actually was the most surprised about is that Helen Huang was coming in like 4th place when I specifically put the bride test in to counteract Love Theoretically a little bit. Absolutely did not work even slightly. So yeah, Love Theoretically got 60% of the vote. The Intimacy Experiment came in at 2nd place with 18%, and then Gwen and Art Are Not in Love had 11, while the bride test came in last place with 10%. So I have started reading Love Theoretically, which I have an e-arc of, and this one is Ali Hazelwood's newest standalone romance. All of her romances are STEM, and this one in particular is following a physics professor who makes very little money in her day job, and so she moonlights as a fake girlfriend. Her favorite client's brother is on the admissions board for MIT, which she is currently applying to attend, and so I believe that there are going to be tensions there because he obviously is going to think that she's dating his brother when actually she's only fake dating his brother, and the romance is between those two. So Ali Hazelwood books are all very similar, so if you like one and you just want kind of more of the same, then you can read like the rest of her books. So I'm really excited to get more of that in Love Theoretically, and I'm also really interested in this one because it does have the fake dating trope like the Love Hypothesis, but this time it's not with the love interest. She's fake dating the love interest brother. There is also there tends to be miscommunication. It's not miscommunication, I would say, it's lack of communication in Ali Hazelwood books, where like just nobody talks to each other and everybody assumes that everybody hates everybody, which to be fair I love. The thing about Ali Hazelwood that I really like is that her couple pairings tend to be like very highly strung girl that can't see one foot in front of her face, and a guy that everybody hates who is actually a big sweetheart. It's the same as The Hating Game, and I adore it, so I'm very excited to get into this one. Now, as we know, it is now April, so I'm now participating in Realmathon and also Magical Readathon. I know for sure that this isn't going to get me the most points for Realmathon because it is not my team genre. I think it gets me something like 20 points to take away from an opposing team, and that's like the maximum that I can get. But in terms of Magical Readathon, I cannot fit this in because of course I can't. I can't fit this in for any of the classes that I actually need to pass. So this one is going to be going in for a different one. I did start this while while I was having my breakfast this morning. So I'm using this one for Artificery, the class for which is Conduit Enhancement, and the prompt is to start your read with a snack, which I've obviously already done. So my next step for the day, so that I can get back into my book as quickly as possible, is to get a shower. The first thing I did this morning after I finished Blood Mercy was my strength workout. I have cleaned, like whipped around the entire downstairs of the house, so that's all clean and tidy. And I've also, like, I have a long list of spring cleaning activities, which is predominantly going through all of the cupboards and storage in the house, decluttering, getting rid of stuff that we don't need and haven't thought about in like months, and also reorganizing it all. So I did the iron cupboard earlier and emptied all of that into a bedding box. So I'm gonna go shower, I'm gonna go and put on something disgustingly comfortable, and I'm not gonna move for the rest of the day. Good evening. I am going to start off by apologizing in case you guys can hear any like sounds in the background. I'm watching / listening to the new Magical Readathon ambience room while I'm reading, which is an alchemy classroom, and I do really like the Magical Readathon ambience rooms. As somebody, as we know, who's like particular about noise, I really like the ones that G makes. But I have made quite a bit of a dent in Love Theoretically now. I'm 36 pages of the, no, not 36 pages, I'm 36% of the way through it, which is around, I think, like 120 to 130 pages. And I gotta say, at the minute, it is my least favorite Ali Hazelwood book. And not because I dislike it, it's just not giving me the same buzzy feelings that like The Love Hypothesis and also Love on the Brain did. I don't feel like I like the main character very much, and Ali Hazelwood has broken the formula a little bit here as well, which I'm not too bothered about. But there is something that I really like that I didn't mention earlier that is in The Hating Game and the two Ali Hazelwoods that I've read, is an element of history, like a secret element of history of like the characters having things or knowing things for a long time that like predates the book, and that kind of come into play in terms of the romance, which is kind of a vague way to say it. I just don't really like want to spoil anything, but this doesn't have that. Like the main characters essentially haven't known each other, they've never met prior to a couple of months before the start of this book, and that is at like one of these family gatherings that Elsie has been hired to attend by the love interest Jack's younger brother. So essentially she fake dates, and she's not supposed to do repeats, but she actually really likes this guy's brother like as a person, and so she agrees to keep going to like family functions with him so that his family think that he's dating. And she's met Jack a couple of times, but she's applying to a job at MIT as like a tenured professor, and it turns out that Jack is on the board. And then we also have the classic Ali Hazelwood element of hate to love, because it turns out that Jack actually wrote this like really degrading article about theoretical physicists many years ago that kind of ruined, well, gave validity to arguments that theoretical physics is bullshit essentially. So when she finds out that he is on the board and he is the guy who wrote this article, she's not very happy, and it makes her even more desperate to get this job, which she generally really wants. But obviously, like when she's been fake dating, she doesn't reveal real information about herself. So she said she was a children's librarian, so as soon as Jack sees her, he knows she's been lying to his brother, because himself and his family all think that she's a children's librarian when she's not, she's a physicist. The only problem is that nobody can get hold of Greg, because he's on like this work retreat to a spa where you're not allowed to talk to anybody or have contact to the outside world, so nobody can like validate these claims. And so far, like, there's nothing wrong with that. I do feel like there's been a lot of like scientific jargon at the beginning, because Ali Hazelwood does do this at the beginning of her books, where she info dumps or like introduces and talks about, I guess, like poignant topics in STEM, especially when it comes to like women in STEM and the way that they're regarded and the way that there's prejudice against women in STEM. And it just feels like a lot at the beginning of this one, because it eases up. It's not too present, I want to say, in the Love Hypothesis. In Love on the Brain, it does start like that, but I felt like it eased up pretty quickly. And in this, I'm 35% of the way through and we're still getting like big paragraphs of like science stuff, which is fine. It's just as somebody who doesn't understand a lot of the science terminology, it's like going over my head a little bit, and it's not like me to glaze over reading Ali Hazelwood, and unfortunately that has happened like a few times throughout here. I'm also like, while I think that the guy is pretty hot, I'm not feeling like the electric chemistry that I felt between the main characters and love interests of Love on the Brain and the Love Hypothesis. And I don't like Elsie. I don't think I like her, because due to like her background and stuff, like one key part of her personality is that she essentially shapeshifts her personality. So because of various like insecurities, instead of being herself in any situation, she identifies the person that she's talking to wants her to be, and she fulfills that role. So she has like a chameleon personality where like if they're looking for somebody who's especially outgoing and who will achieve something, she can be that person. If they're looking for somebody to commiserate with them, then she can be that person, even to the point where like she lies and makes up things like, oh, I see you're upset. I understand, like I've been through something similar and I understand why, but like don't worry, it's gonna get better. And I just really don't like disingenuous people, especially people who have personas or like make up a story to not identify with people, but you know, people who will make up a story and conversation to relate to you, because it just seems disingenuous to me and it doesn't seem to serve a purpose. Like I really value authenticity, so I have known people like that obviously, and it really annoys me, like people who tell lies to have a conversation with you, because what purpose does it serve? Especially as well because I'm really good, like I have an excellent memory. If you're telling me contradicting stories every time I see you, I'm gonna notice. So yeah, I feel like I don't like her because of that. It is just, I was gonna say it is a personal preference, obviously, like you want everybody that you encounter in your life to be genuine, but like it does really bug me because I feel like I'm super transparent. So like people hiding themselves in a persona and like instead of being authentic to themselves, projecting what other people want from them is something that I feel like quite bothers me in a real world setting. So having a character like that, even though I know the reasons why she presents like that, is grating on me a little bit. But yeah, here's hoping it picks up in the second half. It's still good and I'm still enjoying it right now. It's just I'm not having that like really buzzy, I need to keep reading feeling that I've had within the first 100 pages of Love on the Brain or Love Hypothesis. Hello, it's super twilighty, but I just needed to pop in really quickly to let you guys know that I'm 57% of the way through Love Theoretically. I take it all back. I take back everything I said last night about not feeling it and being concerned about not feeling it, because I'm now obsessed. I'm obsessed. I don't really want to say too much about it because obviously there's still like 2 months until this book's released, so I don't want to like give spoilers or anything, but I'm having a good time. Like I read another like 3% after I'd updated you and I was already like, no, we're getting there. Like this is the Ali Hazelwood magic that I've come to know and love. So I do kind of want to finish it tonight. I've still got like 40% left though, obviously, and it's 20 to 8 and my iPad is very much dead. So I'm going to pop that on charge for a bit. I think I'm going to squeeze in a 30-minute workout. And then I do also have the live show for The Great Hunt at 9 p.m. So depending on how long that runs, maybe I'll finish it, maybe I won't, maybe I'll play Fortnite. But if not, I will be finishing it, I would say, tomorrow at the absolute latest. So after the journey, the absolute voyage that we have been on in this vlog, I can confirm it is going to be coming to an end because I have just finished our final book, which was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, and I will 100% eat my words because I did end up thoroughly enjoying this. I've been thinking about kind of why as I was reading through the second half of that, because there were things about this one especially that I feel like I didn't love as much, and actually Ali Hazelwood puts in the acknowledgement section at the back of the book that she did go into like the politics of academia a little bit more than she has in previous books, which I did mention to you guys when I was struggling to get into it in the first like 30%. It was very like science jargon heavy, which I was struggling with. I think that this one definitely I don't want to say that it broke the Ali Hazelwood mold, because there was a lot about it that was very, very similar to like Love on the Brain and Love Hypothesis, which is not a criticism, because I'm reading these books because I want that same kind of thing, because she just does it so well. But it was, so the character archetypes, I would say, were pretty similar to what we're familiar with, but the plot structure was different. So it took me by surprise a little bit, because in Love on the Brain and Love Hypothesis, you are pretty much like, you can side by side compare the scenes. It's the same kind of scene for the same purpose, just different for each book. Whereas this is outside of that, like the plot has a different structure to the other two books. I really, really liked her love interest in here, Jack. Once again, breaking the mold of Ali Hazelwood love interest, if only in appearance. But he has tattoos, so you know, I was always going to be a sucker. And while I was reading this, did I mention I gave it 5 stars? Because I did. While I was reading this, I was thinking about what it is about Ali Hazelwood's romances that I really, really enjoy. And I think it's the, I want to say the safety of the relationship in these books, because the one thing that you know as the reader, even though the love interest is definitely not aware of a single damn thing, is that all of these men are very safe. Like, it's the inevitability of it. It's almost like an unconditional kind of love displayed by the love interest, which for me I find to be very safe and very comforting when I'm reading these. And I feel like it's why the kind of men in Ali Hazelwood books really, really appeal to me. This one I would say is probably, is it the funniest of the three? Potentially. I did have a lot of laugh out loud moments in there. I thought that the steamy and the spicy scenes were very steamy, very spicy. Once again, in that regard, it was like kind of more of the same from Ali Hazelwood, but like I said, that's absolutely not a complaint. I am sad though, and I realize every time I read an arc, I do this, I realize that I don't enjoy reading arcs, because now I have longer to wait for the next Ali Hazelwood book, because I just read one. I do still have the short story collection to go though. I haven't read Loathe to Love You yet, although I'm not expecting the same level of enjoyment from that, because it is short stories, and we all know I'm not a short story girly. But very successful. We finally got a 5 star, sadly not in March. There were no 5 stars in March, but my first read of April is a 5 star, and I feel like I have potential to rate a few more books very highly in April as well. In terms of the 2 readathons I'm now participating in, that one did fulfill the artificery prompt magical readathon, which was to start a book with a snack, and it got me in total, I think it was 24 points to take away from a different realm for Realmathon. So that does bring us to the end of this vlog, but I do just want to take a moment to recap everything that we have read in this mammoth vlog. I know that this is the longest vlog that I've ever posted on my channel, so I'm sorry if you're not a fan of long vlogs, because this is it's gonna be my magnum opus. But here is the stack of books that we read. We had 6 rolls in total. The first one was Other, and for that we read Angel Volume 2, City of Demons. Our second roll was Sequel, and for that I'll keep them stacked up. For that one we read The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan at 680 pages. We then had, oh my god, what was next? Community Shelf. It was a TBR vet. And for that one we read Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson, which was by far our most disappointing read. It wasn't disappointing, because I didn't think I was gonna like it. It was just the worst book that we read, but another adult epic fantasy. We then had a viewer recommendation, and we had Kim's recommendation, which was A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. Roll number 5 was a book from my 2023 TBR, which was Blood Mercy by Viola Roth. And to top it all off, we had a romance, which was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, as voted for by my patrons, which was the best book that I read in this vlog. So I would say this was a pretty successful round. It's been a good time. It's been long. It has been long. But I'm glad that I decided to go for some books like that would challenge me a little bit, instead of reading shorter books solely because I knew longer books would take more time and therefore make the vlog longer, if that makes sense. Like, I went with not safe choices. So I prioritized the content over the content, like the contents of the vlog over the fact that it's content, if that makes sense, which is something that I'm definitely trying to be mindful of, like not just picking up short books because that means I can read more and read faster, actually reading the stuff that I want to read and I'm drawn to, which does tend to be longer books. So I do hope you've enjoyed this vlog if you've made it this far. I don't know when the next installment in this will be, probably in 2 to 3 months, I would say, like the gap between the January and the March round. If you have enjoyed this vlog, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. And I am actually going to be seeing you guys next week, because for the entirety of April I'm going to be posting weekly reading vlogs that are dedicated to Magical Readathon and Realmathon, because they're my 2 favorite readathons. So we're just going to do the full month of like readathon weekly vlogs, and I'm really excited about it. It'll be a nice break from doing any kind of projects as well. So do stay tuned for that if you're interested, and I'll see you all next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.